Hey everyone, welcome to our latest Trade of Black podcast. I'm your host, Shad Dales, and here this morning we are talking psychedelics and a press release that was announced involving one of the bigger names in the space, Numinus Wellness, who plans to boost profitability and refine their business operations based on an announcement that they made, as I said this morning. So what are the details? Well, let's welcome back to the podcast. He's the CEO of Numinus Wellness, which trades on the TSX under the ticker symbol NUMI. Peyton Nyquist, good to see you. How are things?
Things are well. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Busy guy, to say the least, over the last couple of weeks. I also want to bring in for the first time to the podcast just to find out more about how this deal was all structured. So let's welcome in your president and chief operating officer, Michael Tan, to the first time to the podcast. Good to see you, sir. How are things?
Thank you, Shad. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate you having on. And let's dive into it. You know, you made a release this morning that outlines that you've entered into an agreement with the Canadian Centre for Psychedelic Healing, which is CCPH, or furthermore, Field Trip, where you're selling your Canadian clinic assets all in an effort to boost your profitability and really focus primarily on the U.S. market, which I think a lot of investors probably assumed like that was probably the focus for this company moving forward. So, Peyton, walk us into details as to what this announcement is and how important it was.
Yeah, we've looked at the two different healthcare landscapes in the US and in Canada. They are, quite drastically different from a, reimbursement structure to, clinic SOPs, obviously in Canada having a universal healthcare system. And, as we've continued to really refine and display best practices in the US, it's taken, a majority of our focus and frankly,
Yeah.
The vast majority of our revenue does come from those clinics. Almost 90% of our revenue comes from the Canadian clinics. And so this was a strategic opportunity. The group we're selling the clinics to has done an incredible job of, as you mentioned, acquiring some of the Field Trip clinics as well as having their own, and really, has provided a scale where we can continue to be involved with that business, but move the liabilities and the operations to, another group in the private space whose really sole focus is Canada, while, we continue to have our owned assets focused in the US and being able to frankly take the learning from the US and apply it up in Canada.
Which is a lot of the conversations you and I have had recently about the U.S. market. Michael, you're the president, CEO of Numinus. You've been an operator in this industry since day one, and part of this agreement, it will provide Canadian therapists the option to transfer to Field Trip, who will take over the lease of the company's Montreal clinic. So I guess, what is the opportunity for Numinus involved in this? Like, how is the deal structured?
The deal consists of terms that, as Peyton mentioned, allows us to focus on growth and access for therapists and the clients that they serve beyond the four walls of our current three clinics. Field Trip will take over assets in Montreal and Toronto from Numinus, but I think more importantly, the deal consists of a training, marketing, and referral structure where both parties will deeply collaborate, leveraging each other's strengths. This includes exclusive endorsements, Field Trip endorsing Numinus's PAT training program, and Numinus endorsing Field Trip's clinics and cooperative program. And the collaboration also extends to joint marketing campaigns as well, and just enhancing visibility and reach for both organizations. Numinus's training infrastructure will be leveraged as well to incorporate Field Trip's needs, as well as ensuring just comprehensive and effective training programs for them that align with Numinus's best-in-class PAT curriculum. I think,
Go ahead.
I think Numinus will be compensated for any clinic revenue as well that transfers to Field Trip, just fostering a seamless transition for clients while benefiting both companies. And I'll just add that Field Trip's Vancouver site will serve as Numinus's experiential training clinical trial site, just facilitating research and development initiatives.
Okay, so a lot of the joint marketing then still has a presence in the Canadian market for you. So in a lot of ways with the joint marketing, how does this in a lot of ways develop, you think, more into detail from your Numinus network and the therapists that will sign up and be trained properly?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, Numinus has just developed pretty valuable intellectual property. And I think it's essential for every clinic owner and provider entering this space. our our experience in clinic operations, training programs, and just the knowledge gained from the research studies that we've been administering. I think just positions us to support providers and clinic
Yeah.
operators comprehensively in Canada. So rather than support the number of therapists that served our 3 clinics, really we do see an opportunity to support thousands of clinics across Canada, and eventually 10 times more in the States, in their efforts and interests to provide CAT and PAT to services to their clients.
Yeah, I think as more and more viewers get to know who you are more and being, the head of operations with this company itself, as Peyton indicated, like the primary focus is going to be on the US market now. So how do you think this impacts the overall business strategy and more importantly, like the opportunity that's at hand?
Um, I
Go ahead,
think,
Michael.
yeah, I think the decision impacts Numinus's overall business strategy pretty positively. Just allows us to focus our resources and efforts on faster, more exponential growth that supports our long-term vision and mission. I think the strategic alignment with Field Trip and our community support model
Yeah.
pilot that we mentioned in our news release in Canada just is going to inform our approach to future growth and innovation in the States.
Yeah. I know this is a good question. Like, I don't know if we really talked about this all that much, Peyton, but we've seen so many clinic models fail, especially in the US market. You continue to build more and more collaborations with a lot of the drug development companies that are based in the US and for that matter, globally. So I'd like to maybe learn a little bit more as to what you're doing differently. Like, what would your, I guess, peers within the industry, companies say about Numinus? Like, why are you succeeding and building more and more of a brand around that where we've seen a lot of other companies fail in the past?
Yeah. Since founding Numinus over 6 years ago now, the focus has always been on how do we support mental health and incorporate, these new therapies that are coming online, and knowing that, none of these therapies are, panaceas, none of them are magic pills, and you do have to have that supportive mental health infrastructure
Yeah.
to build, a successful model both for the clients, but also financially and for the clinic owners as well. And particularly our US sites have really demonstrated, best practices again for client outcomes, and financially have shown an attractive model for people who want to open clinics or convert clinics in this space that want to be able to incorporate psychedelic therapy.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that we've seen is, and ketamine's kind of been the first opportunity to do that. It's not easy to do. It's not as easy as, okay, there's a drug, there's a protocol that's ready, and you just turnkey it into your clinic. It does require a significant amount of operational infrastructure, not just to be able to implement these different modalities into your clinic, but also financially, as we've talked lots about, the amount of insurance reimbursement that we get is
Yeah.
some of the most in the space. And as Michael alluded to with our Numinus network, which we've talked about in the past, that's really the opportunity that we see to really expand the expertise that we've developed, and the operational infrastructure that's being recognized across both Canada and the US, to be able to serve, as Michael said, thousands, if not tens of thousands of practitioners who maybe own a clinic or maybe want to start a clinic, but don't have the resources to build all of that operational infrastructure and don't have the experience. We've been running
Yeah.
clinical trials in our existing sites with pretty much all the major drug developers in the space, while staying really rooted in mental health care.
Hmm.
And that's built a model that has stood the test of time, where unfortunately many of our peers have not been able to be successful. And at a time where, as we've talked lots about, there's a lot of anticipation around MDMA potentially being approved in
Right.
August of this year. The time is now more than ever to be able to leverage what we've been able to demonstrate for that pending potential approval.
Yeah. Michael, you want to add to that? Like, what have you seen, I think, in the past where you've seen other peers, other companies in the space fail? Like what did you notice and like, I guess really learned from that to like maybe elaborate a little bit more on what Peyton just outlined?
Yeah, I mean, learned. I think we've all learned a lot. Our
Yeah,
peers
I'm sure we
included.
have.
If we could go back in time, but I think the economics of behavioral healthcare and is just intricate and just requires a lot of careful navigation. Being a one-trick pony isn't sustainable. So just you have to offer a range of services, and I think that's really crucial. So taking a look at the clinics that we do have in the States, I mean, between psychiatric services and therapy services, and then the novel therapies such as ketamine and Spravato and TMS. I mean, those
Yeah.
when stacked all together, provide that kind of diversification. I think that's really critical for a successful clinic in this space to operate. And I think that clinics that are sustainable financially are just best positioned to provide future PAT in the future. It's not again that one trick pony. We have to avoid that. I think just like psychedelic assisted therapy suggests transformative healing. I think the administration of it, I think, is really ripe for transformation as well. So we're constantly looking for very innovative ways of not only administering but attracting and converting clients, all the way down to like Peyton mentioned, the reimbursement process, which is a very complex beast in itself too.
I think
and
that's
and
what
and
go
just
ahead,
to
Aiden.
just to speak to that as well, the real bottleneck, I think, for clients who are looking to get access, particularly when you think about things like MDMA assisted therapy, most of the ketamine models in the US are cash pay. And there's a clientele who can
Yeah.
afford that. But when we think about MDMA assisted therapy, psilocybin therapy, those are going to be much more expensive interventions than ketamine. And to be able to have all of that, the sort of financial services and reimbursement infrastructure is going to be, really lucrative and advantageous for people who want to be able to offer this in their clinic. The MDMA protocol anticipated to potentially cost, upwards of $15,000. That's going to be tough for people that are trying to do a cash pay model for that.
Well,
And, yeah.
I think the most important thing too, and Michael highlighted, is conversions. You can have a great business model. You can talk about, the things that you plan to do. And we've seen this before within the industry, but the most important thing is providing the right therapy, trying the right training, and most importantly, converting, a lot of these patients that actually need help. Because at the end of the day, a business model is a business model. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Right. But if you're converting, I think that's what I think a lot of investors and people that follow your story want to hear more of, but that's encouraging to say the least. So with this announcement, as you said, like this is all planned to boost profitability and really refine your business operations, Peyton. So what does this do for your burn rate? And I know this is a question that investors that follow your story are frequently asking. So outline, I guess, what it does.
Yeah, and likewise, as an investor in the company
We'll
who's
get to that.
always most concerned about the longevity and sustainability of the company. The burn rate's always been crucial to us. I think the first couple of years in the space, there was a lot of money spent, really to refine and develop this model that we've created. And the last year or two has really been about reducing that burn rate, not relying on an infinite amount of capital raises in order to get to that place, but also to demonstrate to the drug developers and all of the practitioners that there's a model that is profitable and sustainable and lucrative for people who want to build clinics in this space. And this transaction with the Canadian group, as I mentioned, about 90% of our revenue comes from the United States, while a good amount of our burn was coming from Canada. And
Well
so
said.
this gives us an ability to alleviate that burn from Canada, but still keep a financial interest and upside from all that we've created and ongoing have a strategic partner that we can help, continue to support their business and benefit from that as well.
Yeah. Well, the burn rate, as Peyton just said, Michael, a lot of it was from Canada. And as we said off the top, this is a lot of primary focus on the US market now. And signs point to the FDA providing feedback and a decision of MAPS' MDMA protocol in August. Hard to believe it's only 3 months away. But as we look at where we are today, I've asked this question a couple of times in the past. I'd like to hear it from you. Like, how do you feel the company now is positioned as a business? Should the FDA approve MAPS' MDMA protocol review of their trial for PTSD?
I think we're positioned better than any other clinic in the space, with not only the clinical infrastructure to support future MDMA assisted therapy. We have a lot of trained therapists who are experienced, who are MDMA informed. We've had access to the drug for a very long time through our research.
Yeah.
And we've developed what we believe is a best in class psychedelic assisted therapy training program to alleviate what we believe is going to be a huge bottleneck in the space. There will not be enough trained and qualified therapists to administer this very much needed modality. And so Numinus has all of those components in its core business and its foundation. And I think it differentiates us quite a bit from everyone else.
Yeah, and I think the big question is that, a lot of people are concerned with having enough therapists off the top, but I don't think we're going to be able to answer that question or even probably have enough therapists off the top. But I will say, and there were some numbers that basically broke down on, a number that probably was achievable and the types of revenues this could generate as a company. But have you seen, Michael, like last year when I ran into you guys at the MAPS conference in Denver, how much of an uptick of interest, it's been 11 months since that conference, have you seen as far as therapists wanting to take part in the network and most overall, I guess, shift their career and learn more about this industry?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's been now we've observed a huge growth in interest for sure. I think it exponentially grows as we get closer to FDA approval.
I think the FDA approval announcement is what's going to like solidify or verify where we're at, right? But go on. Sorry.
No, I think that what we often, for those who operate in this space and are already drinking the Kool-Aid, often fail to realize or recognize or appreciate is that there is a huge population of the medical community that yet has not yet seen this opportunity or even exhibited interest in this opportunity because it hasn't been approved, because it isn't legal at this point. So I think once it is, it's going to open up the floodgates, and we're going to see this rapid growth.
Michael, do you strongly believe the FDA will approve it?
That's a really good question. I think that there certainly is, if 6 years in this space and a whole lot of personal impact because of mental health issues throughout my family would indicate that they really would be foolish not to.
Yeah.
If I can just speak to that too, Michael talking about this growing amount of interest that's in the space, I think for people to understand, this is the first significant innovation in mental health care in 50 years. Right. And I think, collectively we can all agree the way we've been treating mental health, isn't working. Right. Doesn't matter which indication you look at. Anxiety, depression, suicidality, substance use disorder, all of those rates are continuing to go up.
Yeah.
And practitioners, feel that more than anybody. Right. And so, you're now at this time where, we just saw last week the FDA or DEA announcing intentions around rescheduling cannabis. And I think, you look at the amount of these protocols that have been approved by the FDA and recognized by the FDA, and the results have been recognized by the FDA. I think the interest and demand there is massive. But very, very few of those people that are interested have had, over 6 years of, really in-depth experience working with these different compounds in their own clinical practice. And because of our interest in research, we know what it's like to actually take a client from our clinic side of the business, bring them through one of these, clinical trial protocols, and then support them after. And so, assuming that there's an approval in August, the amount of people who, one, are, I think, going to be extremely interested, and as we talked about at that conference, there was 10,000 people there, the majority made up of practitioners, interested in this space. But they're going to be looking at this on approval as essentially day one of trying to figure this out, where Numinus has spent the last 6 years and a considerable amount of resources, doing that. And so when we go back to the Numinus network and the licensing model, there is an opportunity to empower and support all of those practitioners who want to implement this into their practice day one in a much more financially digestible way than trying to figure it out on their own, with a group that has the kind of experience that we do.
Yeah, agreed. You know what the biggest selling point in today's day and age is? Data. And a lot of people's perception, like I will say, and I'm glad you brought that up. So the HHS recommendation, the DEA did accept that. So now it's under like review. And from what I'm hearing, that we had a CEO from a pretty substantial cannabis company on last week saying that we probably will get an announcement and an official ruling prior to the election. And there's compelling data. We even had Congresswoman Nancy Mace on last week. And she's like, a lot of people's concerns towards it doesn't align with the data that's, basically portraying, explaining some of the benefits. And that's the number one thing when you think of MAPS's MDMA protocol and the trials that they just basically conducted. It's all based on data that, when you look at the FDA ruling and then possibly a rescheduling, like the future we keep talking about, Pate, in the past, but it's here and now, and how much this could change within the next 3 to 4 months, which really is encouraging, I think, for people, like you've said, that have been battling mental health. It's badly needed, right?
Well, and just to talk about that, there's conversations about, will the election affect, approval at all? The thing that you've seen and where MAPS and now Lycos have been, really strategic in how they've rolled out this protocol is, treating veterans and in a way where you've seen support from both sides of the aisle, right? You've seen, when Donald Trump was in office, that was actually a big, him and his office was a big support of, treating veterans and the work that MAPS has done. You've seen Joe Biden speak publicly about approving MDMA and psilocybin. And so you've seen that support from both sides of the aisle. And I think, again, at a time where we're in this mental health crisis, I don't see, the election affecting negatively the support for this. And frankly, my guess would be, that there will be keen interest and support from both sides.
Don't kid yourself. They want that younger vote too, to have a shot at winning. That's the way I look at it. One thing we always bring up is MAPS, but I've saw some numbers already here in 2024. I don't want to speculate, but some pretty eye-opening numbers as to how much Spravato is generating this year in the calendar year. But one thing I think it's important to share, that yes, that your company has a collaboration with MAPS, but the idea is based on all these trials. Obviously, you want these trials to succeed, but you mentioned earlier in the podcast, Michael, you're not a one-trick pony. So the idea, as this industry basically develops and you build the proper infrastructure, it's to treat people from different kind of like ailments that they have from mental health. And eventually, whether it's through anxiety, depression, PTSD, that is ultimately the goal with your clinical model long-term in the U.S. market, is it not?
Well, we have very good relationships with Janssen as it pertains to Spravato. We have a good relationship with Brainsway, who is our provider of our TMS instruments. We have a good relationship with MAPS, as you called out. But frankly, we have a good relationship with almost every tier 1 psychedelic drug developer as well. And it's just a matter of time before the FDA approves those drugs too. And with the experience that we're gaining, we're going to be very well positioned to not only administer a range of services within our clinics, but also to transfer that knowledge and that skill to other therapists and clinics as well in that Numinus network model. So yeah, a lot of hope, a lot of excitement looking ahead.
All right. Well said. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. Got to have you back on more. Before we let you go, there's one quick question I wanted to ask you, Peyton, and let's just clear up the air. There's been rumors circulating online on whether or not you personally took part in the $6 million bot deal that was announced back in March. I know you're getting a good chuckle out of that. So here we are on the record. How do you want to address this and really clear up any rumors that have been floating around? So what is your response to that? You're on mute. You're on mute.
Of course. First response is anybody who's looking for clarity on that can probably call my wife and ask and ask her, and she can attest to it. But if people can pull up my public filings, I did participate in the last round. I think the maximum that I could participate was about $183,000 Canadian. And so I took down the maximum amount that I was allowed to participate into. And then, as mentioned before, did also have family members who came in for much more than that as well. So, putting my money where my mouth is, as is my family, and extended family. And, yeah, looking forward, I as Michael said, I think, Numinus has gotten itself to a point where it's best suited to be able to serve an incredibly large amount of people through our own clinics, but also the Numinus network and our training, as well as continuing to support, as people have seen press releases, being pretty much one of the number one clinical trial site for all these studies, was mentioned in the MindMed release and the work that we did for their phase 2, running the Cybin studies and pretty much every other major one. And that gives us the ability to continue to support those studies in a, as we've talked about, the clinical trial site management organization that we run is also a financially, beneficial one for us as well. But also keeps us right at the tip of the spear of, being able to run those protocols in our clinics and continue to develop our operating system so that when they're approved, there's an operating system that people can rely on that's informed by, what's happened in the clinical trials.
All right. And if we get any comments to say where exactly can they find some of these filings, you would say go on, like, where could they find this information?
Yeah, it's all publicly filed. So if you go on CDAR SETI, it's all on there. So
okay. Great. Well, listen, appreciate obviously both you catching up here this morning, and congrats obviously on basically the announcement and some of the strategy moving forward. And most importantly, best of luck moving forward, and please keep in touch.
Thanks, Shad.
All right. Thanks guys. Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching our latest podcast. Lots of momentum building. You guys getting all excited? Leave comments below. Again, we want to take this viral. Smash that like button and make sure to click on that bell for all notifications as we start to bring on bigger and bigger guests. Don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, the Baked In newsletter, by logging on to thedalesreport.com. And we want to take this viral, as I said, and make this community grow. So make sure to subscribe on that channel because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks again, everyone, for watching.